Do you ever get nervous about being manipulated by the media? Do you feel like sometimes you distrust what you see on the media and at some point maybe even get confused because you don't know who to believe anymore? Well, in this video, what I want to do is I want to teach you about how to not be manipulated by making you unmanipulatable. I don't know if that's a word or not, but that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make you unmanipulatable, because if you are unmanipulatable, it doesn't matter what they're doing or what anybody's doing. You're going to be bulletproof because you are in a good place. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. If that sounds interesting, stick around. Hey, I'm Brett, licensed psychotherapist and the executive director for The Gathering. The Gathering of Good People is a nonprofit. We're dedicated to helping your emotional health by helping you create personal growth, particularly through our growth groups. Today, like I said, I want to talk a lot about media and help you in particular understand what manipulation is, because there are specific things that are happening when you are being manipulated, and how particularly to make you unmanipulatable, right? Well, the other day I was talking to an attorney, a friend of mine, about this whole video, and I was talking about, how am I going to address media and manipulation? And his comment was interesting. His comment was, well, isn't that what all media does? Aren't all media outlets of any form, aren't they in the business of manipulating people? And I thought to myself, that's an interesting concept, an interesting thought. In some ways, I could see it was true. Yeah, media has an outlet. They have a market they're trying to apply to. They have sponsors that they're trying to generate revenue for. Yeah, I could see, each media outlet has their niche that they're trying to play to and cater to. That makes sense. But also it felt like, no, as a therapist, I hear people use generalizations all the time. My spouse never, or my spouse always, or, these kind of blanket generalizations. And when I hear generalizations like that, I have trained my brain to think, really? Always? Never? And so when I hear his generalization of, aren't all media outlets out to manipulate you? Isn't that their job to do? The other side of my brain says, no, I don't think everybody's the same. I don't think always and putting everybody in the same category really is an appropriate response. And I think there's good media out there, and I think there is bad media out there. And what I want to do is I want to be intelligent about knowing the difference. And in some ways, if I adopt his philosophy and statement, oh, well, all media is manipulating you, it actually puts me in the wrong mindset and makes me more manipulatable than less manipulatable. So let me break it down and talk a little bit about what's going on, so you can understand what is manipulation, and then you can understand how you can make sure you're not manipulatable. Now, I'm going to break out Abby. Abby is my brain here. Abby Normal. Everybody say hi, Abby. Abby, I have her broken open for a reason, because I want you to see that your brain, my brain, is really made up of two brains. Actually, it's made up of 5 different brains, but we're going to look at 2 general structures within your brain that kind of dominate the structure and the processes within your brain. And we went over this a little bit in the last video, talking about truth. What is truth? Because these 2 different parts of your brain, because they process differently, because they think differently, because they're different brains, you have 2 different truths living inside your head. And they live there because they really process differently. They're not like contradictory. One is canceling out the other. They're different kinds of information, so they get compartmentalized in different ways. So let me go over the 2 different kinds of brains. Let me go over the 2 different kinds of truths, and then we'll kind of see how this plays into this whole idea of being manipulated. Well, the first part of the brain that you always think of and always see is this outer layer of the brain. This is called the neocortex. Neo means new, And cortex is the layer, the outer layer of your brain. So this outer layer, this wrinkly thing, part of your brain, is the newest part of your brain. And it's modern, it's pretty unique to humans and primates, more evolved creatures. And that's why we are able to think, because this neocortex is our thinking brain. Analyzing, logic, processing, math, all of those kind of things are happening up here in the neocortex. Now, there's a different part of your brain you can see if you look inside that structure in there that looks really different, right? It doesn't look at all like this outer layer does. It's structured very differently. And it is. It's a very different brain. This is the kind of brain that your cat has, your dog has, animals have. This is a much older part of the brain. Not the oldest, but it's an older part of the brain. And we call this the mammalian brain. This is the kind of brain that your mammals have, like your cats and dogs. This part of the brain thinks very differently. Your cat and dog think very differently. They don't think in terms of words and logic and rational thought, math, science, all that kind of stuff. They think more primitively. And the way they process through their limbic system is through their emotions. And that's why I call this your emotional mind. This is the limbic system, and it's in charge of your emotions and feelings. This is where manipulation happens, because as we saw in our last video about truth, when we talk about how the brain sees truth, this part of the brain sees truth, by lining up the facts and the data and the information, and it could be deceived if it's given wrong facts or wrong data or incomplete facts or incomplete data. Could be deceived that way. Yeah, that's true. But that's how it finds and evaluates truths, by thinking. But this part of your brain is the truth that it feels and sees and notices comes through energy. The more energy the emotional part of your brain feels, the more true something feels. And the facts and the data don't matter at all. It's irrelevant. It's how much energy do I have on that thought. So a really quick, easy, simple example is that you could be at a horror movie, and it's a really good horror movie because your heart's racing, you're stressed out, you're anxious, and you're sitting there with your higher thinking brain manually thinking, this is only a movie, this is only a movie, this is not real, this is, I'm okay, because it feels like you're in danger. And the reason why it feels like you're in danger, why that feels true, is because of the energy that's being generated by this limbic system, by this emotional brain. And so it feels true that you're in danger when you're really, really not. And that's part of the fun, of horror movies. If you think horror movies are fun, I hate horror movies. I have anxiety. Life in general is anxious enough for me. I don't need to go out and make myself more afraid. No thanks. So anyway, that's the way truth is generated by the limbic system, is by energy. And unfortunately, of these two brains, you would like to believe, you'd like to tell yourself that this outer cortex is the more dominant, the more in control, the more prevalent brain, but it's not. Where truth is generated for you is through your emotional brain, your limbic system. And that's where you can be manipulated, because this part of your brain is so powerful, it can influence and basically hijack the rest of your brain. That's like that example we were looking at when we were in the movies a minute ago. This part of your brain can easily hijack the rest of your brain. And that's when you become manipulatable. When someone can get you into your emotional brain and out of your thinking brain, they can manipulate you by generating energy, by generating tons of emotions. The more emotion they can generate in you, the more they can manipulate your brain and hijack your own thinking. So in essence, that's what manipulation is always about. It's always about getting people to stop thinking, get them out of their thinking brain, and get them into their emotional brain, and get them into their feelings. And if I can get them into their feelings, then I can control what they think, really, by controlling what they're feeling. So if we're looking at media as being a source of manipulation, what we're looking at is media's goal, if they're manipulating you, is to get you, one, to not think or to stop thinking, and two, to get you feeling. All right, that's the clear, simple definition. Now, your thinking brain may say to yourself right now, Well, news always makes me feel something because, when you're reporting even on the death of somebody on the highway, a car accident, that's kind of sad. And so it's really easy to think, well, all media is manipulation. All media is trying to manipulate me, like my attorney friend said. Because when you watch the news, there's emotions in there. There's sadness, there's tragedy, there's hardship, there's fear, there's anger in what we're seeing in the news. And again, that's where I want you to be not manipulatable. That's where I want you to think. The way to keep you out of being manipulated is to keep you thinking. So, as I'm watching the news, this is what I do. I watch the news and I think to myself, is this person reporting the news, reporting something that happened, and maybe what happened is really sad, or maybe what happened is really scary, or maybe what happened, is really agitating and enraging, maybe. But are they reporting these events, and then my emotions are coming up in reaction response to these events? Or are they trying to promote a particular emotional agenda and then using events to manipulate these emotions? Because those are two very different things. Every night on the news, particularly these days, there's a segment on there that talks about COVID, that talks about, well, how many people died in my state? How many people got sick? It came up with a positive diagnosis this week or even today. Overall, how many people have gotten better? How many people have kind of worked through it? They go through the numbers. Now, the way the news media that I watch, my local news media, the way they present it is they present it as numbers. They present it as information. They present it as facts. And there may be emotions connected to those facts, but they're not hyping the emotions. Or at least when I watch them and I analyze them and I think about what they're doing, that's not my perception. My perception isn't that they're hyping the numbers in order to create emotional reaction. They're reporting on the numbers, and that may produce emotional reaction, but their intent is to report. And so when I look at my news and I see that that's what their intent is, and I feel like that's what their agenda is, I feel safe. Because what I see my media outlets doing, the ones I like to watch, I see them promoting thought. I see them promoting people thinking, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. What do you think about that? And so for me, that's a sign of a good media outlet, someone that's not manipulating, because they're promoting thought first. A lot of times, you're right, some media outlets have a particular bias. They have a particular way of spinning and seeing the world. But again, the news media that I appreciate, that I love and enjoy, they try to, at least, present two sides. So they'll say, hey, here's what the blue people think. The blue people think that the orange people are trying to eat their children. And just so we can understand, let's talk to some orange people and see what the orange people think. Well, the orange people think the blue people are trying to steal their rights, or trying to take away their privileges, or trying to control them in some way. Okay. And what, for me, what is useful is that the news gives me information. And then from that information, I can dig deeper. I can dig deeper and look more into what are orange people thinking? What are blue people thinking? Why are they thinking this? Where does this thinking come from? And the information that the news is providing me is promoting my thought process. So again, by my definition, that feels good. That feels like I'm not being manipulated because they're not promoting my emotional reactive brain, but they're promoting my thinking brain. Now, there are times, you watch the news and you watch the media and you go, oh yeah, oh no. And you have these kind of visceral gut reactions. And I would actually suggest to you that those are kind of dangerous. It doesn't even matter what they are. They're dangerous because if you watch the news media and they, do a good job selling an idea and you just mindlessly take that idea and go, oh yeah, that was bad. Or even, oh yeah, that's good. Okay, great. And you take in the information and you just allow it to just come straight in your brain without thought, without thinking about it, you are actually in a vulnerable place. You're in a vulnerable place for manipulation. And my hope is the media outlets that you're watching and looking at try to minimize that and maybe even try to push your buttons at times by getting you to think about other things. My hope also is that your media outlets, whatever they are giving you a chance to do your own thinking in terms of your own research. There's a lot of times where we'll see media and they'll say, hey, blue people are doing this, or orange people are doing that. And that is designed to upset us and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe the orange people are doing that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe the blue people are doing that. That's so wrong. And you just take that information and you just spin with it with your emotions. Again, that's really walking you down the manipulation path. My hope is the news says, hey, this is what orange people are saying. And this is where we're getting our information about orange people. And you can go to that resource, to that outlet and explore for yourself what people are thinking and saying. And you can do your own journalism and look at what the truth is. That's useful to me because that promotes thought. When somebody just says, hey, this is what orange people are thinking, or this is what blue people are thinking, and then they give you no way to be able to analyze that and to see for yourself, is that really what blue people are thinking or really what orange people are thinking? If you can't verify it yourself, if you can't look at the data yourself, because they're not giving you any data to look at, I would see that suspiciously. Because again, I want to be able to think for myself. And to me, good media helps me think for myself. The other thing that I see along that same lines with sometimes media outlets is that sometimes media outlets will absolutely discard and dismiss the opposite, their opponent's their opponent's side. And they'll say some blanket statement like, oh, that's fake news. Oh, they're not reliable. Oh, they're just lying to you. Oh, they're not telling you the truth. And again, it may be true, I don't know, but again, they're not allowing me to think for myself. And by just saying, oh, somebody said the opposite of what I just said, oh, well, they're fake. They're lying. They're wrong. By just dismissing what somebody else has just said doesn't allow me to process it for myself. And so anybody says that to me, anybody says, hey, oh, that person's a liar, or those people can't be trusted, whoever those people are. Again, that seems like one of those extreme things. Or, everything that comes out of Fox News is a lie, or everything that comes out of CNN is a lie. When I see those kind of generalizations, they make me really cautious. Because what those generalizations are saying is, you don't need to think about it. Just take our word for it. Those people, they're lying to you. And we already know they're lying to you, so we're just going to tell you that they're lying so you don't have to look at what they're really saying. Just listen to what we're saying. And again, they're robbing me of the opportunity to think. And because I can't think about things myself, I am then in that raw moment of being manipulatable. When I am manipulatable is when I'm in my emotions, when I'm in this emotionally charged spot and my thinking brain has turned off. When I am not manipulatable is when I'm thinking for myself, when I'm analyzing, like I did when that attorney said, oh yeah, all media is manipulating you. Part of it I could see true. Part of it, I don't like the generalization. That doesn't feel right. And I thought through that statement myself, and that's what prevented me from being manipulated. You can't be manipulated if you think for yourself. You can't be manipulated if you take information from anywhere and any source and you process it yourself. In fact, science or the scientific thinking process actually encourages this. So you don't manipulate yourself. You don't deceive yourself with your own emotions. Science will look at a hypothesis, and then instead of trying to prove that hypothesis, for example, water runs downhill. Instead of spending all my science focused on how can I observe water running downhill, a scientist will create what's called the null hypothesis, and the null hypothesis is the opposite. And actually, his research or her research will be about, does water run uphill? Or can water run uphill? And all of their science and all of their research and all of their studies will focus on, is it possible for water to run uphill? And they're actually looking at the opposite of what their initial thought was. I think water runs downhill. And what they're going to find by looking at the opposite of what they're looking for is that either it is true, water does run uphill, or it's false, water runs downhill. And if it's false, you're nulling that hypothesis. That's why it's called a null hypothesis. You're discounting that hypothesis. When you discount that hypothesis, you're affirming the hypothesis that you really had all along. And they create that kind of a system of thinking to make sure you don't trick yourself, to make sure you don't manipulate yourself, make sure that you don't deceive yourself because you're looking at the other side of it. And so that would be my challenge with you, that if you want to make sure that you're not being manipulated by media, that's really on you to make sure that you're not manipulatable. And that means you are thinking for yourself. And so my challenge for you is take a thought, any thought, and see if you can think about the opposite. All blue people are bad. Okay. Are there any good blue people? All orange people, they just want to eat your babies. Okay. Are there any orange people that don't want to eat babies? Are there any orange people that's not what they're interested in? And see for yourself, think for yourself about all the sides of any question or any particular idea. Because if you're seeing things from all different sides, you may come back to the conclusion you had before. And that's fine. That's nothing wrong with that. But what you're doing is you're finding that conclusion yourself. You're thinking it through yourself. And that's what makes you not manipulatable, because you're thinking for yourself. Thanks so much again for watching. I hope you like this, like it. Make some comments. I'd love to hear what you think about blue people or orange people or about manipulation. And again, I hope I can see you at some time at our gathering. Again, I'm Brett R. Williams, and I'll talk to you soon.